Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Gotta Glitter, the audiobook podcast of my memoir by the same name. However, this week, instead of reading a chapter from the memoir, I am going to play you an interview that I did with my mum several months ago, where we delve into her experience living with me as a child and what it was like without being identified as having this major generalized anxiety, my learning issues, and how she saw that impact my life growing up. Just for fun this week, I'm going to include one of my own songs at the end of this podcast. You know, every week I like to give you a little snippet of one of the songs that relates to the chapter of the book. So this week, we've got a spare space. Why not? I'm going to chuck in my own song, Ragdoll, at the very end. Look, this was recorded over a decade ago. Wow, probably 15 years ago. That can't be right. I can't be that old. It relates to some of the subject matter that I've been talking about in the previous chapter. And so a lot of body image, self-loathing, moving through my eating disorder, writing about it in this way just helped me kind of process my emotions and my feelings. So that's what Ragdoll's about. It's also the very first song I ever made a music video to. So again, very retro, but I will post it. Being very vulnerable, but I will post the YouTube link to that and a clip on my Instagram at Gotta Glitter Memoir as well. So you can check out the beginnings of where Kirsty all began in the depths and darkness of my angsty teen emotions. All right, you can look forward to that at the end. Thanks for listening. And as always, if you need any more information or you want a copy of the book, head on down to the show notes or visit kirstenmoore.com.au. I do have to apologize. The audio quality isn't perfect, but I hope you enjoy this chat with me and my mum, Tiina. She has been a teacher for over 30 years. She has a PhD in drama education, and she is one of my primary editors. I would like to welcome Dr. Moore, my mother. Hello.
Thank you. Pleased to be here.
We are both a little bit anxious, a little bit nervous, but hey, we're probably going to end up in tears or rocking back and forth on the floor as per usual when we have these kinds of discussions in a more private setting. Thank you so much for doing this with me. I appreciate it greatly. And also just having you with me throughout the last 34 years of my existence.
A pleasure indeed.
You have been over these first few chapters with me, so you know them pretty well in and out, but I guess I just wanted to know what my anxiety looked like to you as a small child when I was growing up, because obviously for me, I just thought that that's how all kids felt, like, you know, that they were going to explode and die and shit themselves all at the same time constantly.
I don't recall anything notable before primary school. You were had close friendships as a young girl, and you engaged in a lot of play, and you were a busy youngster. But you started to lack self-confidence, I would say, somewhere around year 3, and were always checking in to make sure you were doing things right, or that you had a grasp on something that you needed to do.
What do you mean, checking in with you?
Yes, you didn't come home and, for example, open your book and just do your homework. And I was used to Ben, who mostly wanted to get his homework out of the way. He didn't want any help. He didn't care if he got things right or wrong. What he wanted to do was get it done, throw it out into the world, i.e. school the next day without having anybody check it, and get on with what his own preoccupations were. And you much more wanted to be led by the hand and had everything double checked. And also, you quite often felt that you didn't understand what needed to be done.
No, yeah. I remember always feeling, even like throughout high school, feeling like I was always misunderstanding the question, or that I wasn't going to understand the question. And I guess that's how we realized, particularly in primary school, that perhaps I had some mild learning difficulties, which is, embarrassing to admit. And then they put me in the special English program with all the other weird kids. And yeah, you sort of, I don't know, end up feeling like, I remember feeling like I was dumb, like I was a dumb kid.
I think that came a little bit later. I do remember that in year 5, you were put into a program that geared you towards understanding, not just decoding your reading, but comprehending what was written. And that was the first indication that we really had that you were reading for expression or reading for decoding the language, but not really engaged in the story or understanding the underlying themes of what you were reading. And that came a little bit later. What I picked up on was, to use the education jargon of the time, that you needed a lot of scaffolding to do your tasks. And scaffolding is a term that's used when you just pick a skill that needs doing and start with the basic need or instruction, and you master that, and then you can get on to the next stage. And then I was hoping that by careful scaffolding of your work at home, that you would develop more confidence in being able to do it for yourself. Your school had a tradition of public speaking, so you needed to be guided through, how to do a 3-minute public speech. And most kids do need to be guided through. And once you were guided through, how do I put together a 3-minute public speech on something that's going to interest somebody else? You were away because you love performing.
And what happened when I did my first public speech?
Yes, you took it right to the absolute nth degree, and you did a speech about the unusual names in our family, and were able to tell really good stories about them. And it was fantastic because...
And I won. Thank you.
You won. You won.
There was some kind of competition at school.
Well, it was. You won your year level.
Thank you.
And I
just wanted that to be on the record.
Yeah, you did. I believe that to be in year 4. But what was always difficult for you was how to start. Where do I start?
I mean, I don't know if it was dyslexia or like an ADD thing. Only very recently, like in the last few weeks, my new psychiatrist has diagnosed me now as having ADHD and ASD, autism spectrum disorder symptoms. He hasn't come out and said directly that I necessarily have these conditions, but I definitely remember feeling when I was reading, whether it be like a math problem or an English question, I remember feeling like I was reading it, like I understood all the words, but I couldn't make a sentence make sense. And I would have to read it over and over again. And I still do that now, even with my own book. Like I have to read this, and it's like I find reading really difficult because I have to read the sentence 3 times to make sure I'm listening to myself read it. That's what it feels like. It feels like I'm looking at the words, the sentences going in through my brain, but I'm not. It's not how like dyslexia is depicted on TV where they see like the letters moving around and stuff. It's more like I am distracted elsewhere in my brain and I'm not listening to the information go into my head. That's the only way I can explain it.
Yeah. So it's now called reading for meaning. And that's the part that, and some people do have to explicitly be taught to read for meaning rather than decode. It's not that uncommon.
Yeah.
It's just that I think you were lucky enough because you were coping well enough that it wasn't picked up until about year 5. And then it was picked up that you weren't reading for meaning. And you can't answer questions on a text if you're not reading for meaning, if you're just decoding letters, right? That's more like learning to read. I would never have picked up on ADHD. I had other students that had ADHD, so you weren't following that pattern at all. But if your mind was as busy as you say it was, that actually makes me sad because perhaps there could have been something that could have been done for just calming that to allow you to focus earlier and then gain more confidence along the way about your own learning.
Yeah.
And because we do have men on the spectrum in our family, I knew also what that looked like, and I don't think that I would have picked you for that either.
Yeah. Now we know that girls present very differently than boys with ADD. It could be just that I picked up on things just from dad, like nature nurture kind of things. Sometimes I think, oh, maybe I just reacted that way or learnt to act that way because I watched my father with this condition, and that's just how I learnt how to navigate the world. My brain was perhaps acting in a way that might have been like as busy as an ADD person would present outwardly, but because I was so debilitated by anxiety, I put all of those impulses inside and kind of suppressed them, and that's where it came out as this sense of like lack of confidence and just eternally living in fear.
Yeah, the anxiety I think I picked up on a little bit later, maybe as young as 9 or 10, but you used to go to after school care, but I was working part-time. So I do remember feeling that on days that I wasn't working and I would pick you and Ben up at car park pickup, that I'd know right away by the way you were walking in the car whether you'd had a good day or a bad day. And when you had a good day, you were on top of the world. But when you had a bad day, you would get in the car in a very, very foul mood, but you never wanted to talk about it. You just wanted to get in the car and go home.
Yeah, I don't remember really. Like I remember not talking about any bullying or any issues like going on with my friends. But yeah, especially as I got older primary school, that became more and more of a challenge for my self-confidence. My best friend in school was tiny, skinny little thing, and I was Amelia's fat friend, Kirsty. That's something that went with me from primary school throughout my entire school career. I think about now and I see photos of myself as a little kid. I wasn't fucking fat and I was beautiful. I honestly don't get it. I try and wrap my head around it now. I'm like, what? I must have been putting some energy out there that was just so I don't know, like that people just didn't like, and they chose to pick on the one thing that they know girls fear most in the world, particularly in the 90s when celebrities that were already tiny were considered fat. You know, I've recently learned that, like, Bridget Jones's Diary, we know that Renee Zellweger put on like 20 kilos for that role, maybe more. She was still under 60 kilos as that part, or like around 60 kilos. And that is tiny. And she was seen as this like grotesque image of fatness. And, you know, every talk show she went on, it was like, how did you lose the weight afterwards? And afterwards, she was like, in my opinion, she has never, like, she was anorexic, and she has never gotten back to a body that was pre-Bridget Jones, which was just kind of normal. Anyway, that's an aside. But, you know, all these celebrities, Nicole Richie, who was Paris Hilton's fat friend Nicole, again, tiny, you know, watching The Simple Life, but we're being told that she's obese, and then the next minute she's running down the beach in a bikini that can barely even be held up on her skeletal body. So these are the people that we as teenagers and prepubescent girls were told were fat, and then they corrected their dysfunction and became societally approved. So I don't know, it kind of, that also began to affect my self-confidence. So I went from feeling like a bit dumb, and then all of a sudden it was like the body image stuff came in, and yeah, that's when those kind of two worlds collided. And I remember things like athletics day and fun run day, and like weeks before being paralyzed with fear about those upcoming days. Do you remember that? Do you remember me like for, I don't know if I would talk about it, maybe I wouldn't, but
you hated swimming carnival. I do remember that. And you specifically hated orienteering.
Oh my
I remember
God,
that, which was an annual event. And I understand that because I mean, we never did orienteering really when I was growing up, so that was new to me too. But, you know, for somebody whose brain was really, really busy and not confident, to figure out how to hold the map the right way round and then read a map through a part of the local countryside that you'd never sort of been to before could be very daunting. I'm not surprised by that at all. In terms of athletics or cross-country runs or anything like that, I would totally have agreed with you. I felt exactly the same way. When anything involved running, I knew myself, you know, as also being the fat friend when I was growing up, that that can be a really, really unpleasant experience. They are quite convinced now that when you face your fears and come out the other end, that you feel better about it, and that it's really important to face those fears. But I'm not really convinced that that's what happened with you. You know?
I actually feel sick to my stomach thinking about orienteering right now. Like, I didn't put orienteering in the book. I haven't thought about that in a few years, and I feel like I'm going to vomit. I remember one year I was following my friend Amelia around trying to figure out where she was collecting markers. Like, I couldn't even, we would practice orienteering at school, the school that I had been going to since, not even prep, since kindergarten. And I couldn't look at the map and read it the right way. Like, I could not do it. So like you're saying, when I was put into a place that I didn't know, that also didn't really have markers, it was just trees and bush as far as I remember, and maybe an oval, I was completely paralyzed by fear and confusion. And then there's the added level of humiliation, knowing that I'm getting further and further behind. I'm seeing other people finish and going out. I know there's a time limit to get this done. And I just remember one day just being like, I don't know if they had an alarm go off or how I knew that it was over, but I remember being the single last person out of the entire primary school, like hundreds of kids, to like come crawling out of the woods. And I hadn't got a single tag or whatever they are, you know, myself. The only ones I'd gotten were off friends that had been like, oh, Kirsty's struggling. We better give her like a clue on where one of these tags is on a tree. Oh, I'm like shaking with anxiety. It was so bad. Anyway, I think that was the last year that I was forced to do it, because as soon as we entered high school, we didn't have to do it anymore. But fuck me, that was a dark time in life. I didn't know that it could get darker than orienteering, but alas.
So who knows? Maybe that was an auditory processing problem, or maybe it was an ADHD problem, but you wouldn't have been alone. So it's interesting to speculate as to whether things had been different if that had been picked up. But it's not unusual for girls to be embarrassed if they're, you know, picked last on a team. And how many stories do you hear about that now? But
trauma!
It did seem to devastate you more than other people who were going through similar things at the same time.
Yes, I'm a very delicate flower, as my friend Vanessa likes to say.
Well, I recently heard again on the radio, and I haven't heard it for a very long time, about somebody who talks about the dandelion orchid phenomenon.
Oh, yeah.
And it was interesting.
Can you just explain what that is?
Well, the dandelion is the child who can grow up through the cracks in the path and the sidewalk, and it doesn't really matter too much what you throw at him, whether you call him names or, you know, whether he's last in the race, but tends to be like water and have it roll off, you know, doesn't take it personally, doesn't really turn inward in obsessing about, you know, flaws or failings, for example, or weaknesses, just whether it's sunny or raining or
you think I have flaws and failings?
Oh, forgive me. We'll continue to thrive, you know, and come spring and a little sprinkling of water will come up and bloom. And the orchid, I mean, by comparison, needs ideal conditions to thrive. And for you, they weren't ideal conditions, you know, you did obsess about things, and yes, you have been my little orchid for most of my life, needing the right humidity, the right sunshine, the right water, the right amount of educational scaffolding and confidence building.
Yes, I was born to be the boy in the bubble, and yet I was flung cruelly out into the world to fend for myself, as if I were just a dandelion.
No, we discovered you weren't. You weren't the dandelion. I think I'm a dandelion.
Yeah, you are. And Dad, I think I'm much more like Dad. I think he's much more sensitive flower than, you know, we
ever give him credit for.
Exactly, yeah. Oh dear. Is there anything else you wanted to add about this chapter? Because I feel I'm after the orienteering fiasco, I'm starting to calm down a little. So anything else that you wanted to discuss?
No, actually, no. I've written paranoia down in my notes when I was rereading that chapter. And I'm not really sure why, except maybe that's the extreme end of hypersensitivity or lack of confidence.
Yeah.
And that that you felt, everything that you did, there were eyes on you. So it was being judged, from a very early age.
Definitely when I look back on my school experience, I can no longer tell, knowing how sensitive I am now and how often I get things wrong. Like if somebody looks at me a certain way or says something, I react. And then once I have a conversation with them, I have realized that I've interpreted something totally differently.
I think it happened a lot.
But so I now wonder, was I getting picked on as much as I internalized? Was I probably getting picked on a bit, and then I was on watch for it all the time? I think that's probably more accurate. And I definitely felt like all eyes were on me in the classroom. I remember feeling like I got comments that I had a slutty way of walking. So then all of a sudden I can't even walk anywhere without feeling worried that somebody's looking at the way that I walk, so things could have been a comment that happened once, maybe twice, and then it's in my mind and I cannot forget it for the rest of eternity. Like the fact that I hate my earlobes, despite a friend just jokingly mentioning them in year 4, I want to say, at after school care, probably one of the days I got into the car and I was in a foul mood and didn't want to talk because I had hideous fucking earlobes. Oh, it's a very hard life. It's hard being me. Oh, God, thank you for joining me on this very distressing journey that I've decided to embark on. Hopefully some healing comes out of this process.
I'm sure it will.
They slide down my face like dirty rotten waves, and I don't move, I don't learn, and I think I'm different. I'm not on his drug, but I'm addicted to something. I'm in a different box to them. She's weaker,